Bienvenidas, comadres and friends, to our August 2020 teleconference. This is Julia Abrantes, Submissions Coordinator for the Las Comadres Book Club. We continue to wish you and your familias health, safety, and love. We encourage you to put laughter in your life. Prayer and laughter help us to relieve stress, and I suspect we all need the help we can get these days. Podcasts are now uploaded to our website. Feel free to download to listen to any of your favorite interviews. Mil gracias to Comadre Dora Abreu for doing this labor of love for us. Our August 2020 teleconference features Book of the Month author Marisel Vela. First, a bit of history about our book club. Our first book club gathering was in July 2004 in New York at Comadre Maria Ferrer's apartment. After a hiatus, it was restarted in March 2007. Comadre Johanna Castillo, at that time national organizer of the book club and former Comadres board member, said, "We are launching the book club to promote the work of Latino authors to every book lover, to bring our community to bookstores, and to support our writers. Now more than ever, we need to support our Latino authors. We encourage you to join our local book club in your city. We have clubs in 12 cities. Austin has 3 area book clubs. If your city doesn't have one, why not help us start one? For more information about our book club, please visit our website at latinolit.com. We started these teleconferences, Reading with Las Comadres, in October of 2006. We are in our 14th year. We created the Reading with Las Comadres teleconferences and book club in an effort to entice everyone to read more Latino authors, to learn about Latino roots and different perspectives on Latino cultures and heritage. Our book club and teleconferences are open to all, not just Latinos. We are creating a space for everyone to explore the Latino writer's mind and soul as portrayed through the written word. So please invite others to join us. We are very grateful to the publisher, Live Right, a division of W.W. Norton, for their support of this teleconference with free books for our early registrants. For more information about the author and publisher, please visit our website at latinolit.com. Our Book of the Month author, Marisel Vela, will be interviewed by Maria Ferrer. Let's learn a little bit about Marisel. A proud Boricua, Marisel Vela is the author of If I Bring You Roses and the 2-time winner of Willow Review's Fiction Prize. Marisel Vela grew up in the Barrio in Chicago's Humboldt Park neighborhood, where she was raised by Puerto Rican immigrant parents. One of 6 children, she was the first in her family to earn a college degree, a BA in journalism from Northern Illinois University. Vera won the Willow Review Literary Magazine's Fiction Prize for 2 of her short stories in 2000 and 2003. She wrote her novel, If I Bring You Roses, to discover her Puerto Rican heritage. She lives in suburban Chicago with her husband and 2 children. Maria Ferrer joined Las Comadres para las Américas in 2006 and immediately felt at home. She is thankful to have found a group of strong, like-minded Latina women who come together in sisterhood and friendship. She enjoys the networking and camaraderie of the monthly comadrazos, as well as the lively discussions of the book club meetings. Maria is the new project manager for Las Comadres and Friends National Latino Book Club. She looks forward to helping grow the book club by connecting Latinx women around the world via culture and literature. Maria lives in New York City, where she works as a meeting planner and enjoys writing and crocheting. Comadre Maria, take it away.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Marisel. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Hi. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Good, good. So let's start. How are you doing? How are you coping with this pandemic?
Well, I am mostly in Chicago and just hunkering down, reading, writing, taking walks, pretty much what everybody's doing, and wearing a mask all the time. That's definitely what I'm doing.
Very good, very good. Thank you for wearing the mask.
I think it's necessary, yes.
So we're excited to talk to you about your novel, The Taste of Sugar. and your research. We understand that you wrote your 2 novels to discover your Puerto Rican heritage. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I can. Thank you. I just wanted to say that I think that Puerto Ricans are not immigrants, we're migrants, really. That's something that I have thought of a lot, and I think that's what we are, so I just wanted to put that out there. Because Julia was saying immigrants an introduction, and I think that we really are migrants because we belong to the United States, even if we're not really an official part of the United States. But I wrote the first novel, If I Bring You Roses, because I wanted to think about my parents' story and why they left Puerto Rico in the 50s and what they might have encountered in Chicago in the 50s. And I wrote The Taste of Sugar because I wanted to learn more about the history of my parents and my ancestors, because they didn't really know in Chicago, in Puerto Rico in the 1930s and the 1940s and the 1950s. When my parents were going to school, they weren't taught Puerto Rican history. My mother, who was an excellent student, learned American history. So when I would ask her questions about Puerto Rico, she couldn't answer. And as I was researching The Taste of Sugar, which took me many years, I started researching it almost as soon as I finished the first novel, If I Bring You Roses, because when I was conducting research for If I Bring You Roses, I stumbled upon the fact that over 5,000 Puerto Ricans had gone to Hawaii in 1900 and 1901 to work in the sugar cane plantations, something that I didn't know. And of course, my mother didn't know. So that was really intriguing.
Yes, very. I only found out about, I was very interested in your book because I only found out about the Puerto Ricans in Hawaii like last year. And that was just because a good friend of ours, Clara Galvano, she was writing an article for a magazine that talked about that. And it's sort of like a hidden part of history, Puerto Rican history, that we don't know. And I was researching because it was so cute. As I was reading your novel, we would stop, get into Google. What does that say? What does that say? So it was very interesting. So as you did your research, we were doing our research. And and just so you know, I don't know if you know, but there are 30,000 Puerto Rican Hawaiians on the island today. That we've grown a lot.
Right.
So, one of the things that we enjoyed about the book was the letters between the sisters. You know, that was really a good vehicle that we can learn more about what was happening between the families and seeing the effect of that American colonialism on both the lower and the upper classes. You know, now how did you get the idea about the letters?
Well, I needed to get somebody to someone because I really wanted to write about the American invasion, and and different things were happening in San Juan that were happening in Utuado in El Campo. So I had to get somebody into San Juan. So I thought, okay, I'll send Elena to San Juan, and then she could let the reader know as she lets Valentina know what's happening in San Juan. I wouldn't have been able to write about the day that, or the day at dawn when the U.S. bombed San Juan if I didn't have Elena there. So I needed Elena there to endure it so that she could write her sister Valentina, and that way we could all learn what happened.
Very interesting, very interesting. And that we love the communications between the sisters, you know, because you could see when they were together, they were so, you know, they were sisters getting into trouble, you know, doing their hair, you know, flirting with the guys and all this stuff. And then they really, after her marriage, they never meet again, which was heartbreaking, but still the letters kept them together. you know,
Mm-hmm.
and we've lost the art of letter writing, which was bad.
Well,
But anyways,
mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I was going to say that I felt that they're not getting together was something that was very true during that time and even afterwards, because in Puerto Rico at that time, just they lived so far and there was no telephone. And then when they go to Hawaii, how could they possibly communicate? How do you know if a letter that you wrote was received? And so it is very tragic, but I thought that it's something that happened then and it even can happen now.
Now, one of the things that we were intrigued by was that you used a lot of Spanish words throughout the novel, and you never translate them, not in the moment, and there's not like a glossary.
Mm-hmm.
Were you not scared that you would confuse your readers, that you may lose them?
No, because I read a lot of Russian novels, and they have a lot of French words, and nobody cares. And I think that, right? Am I right? And I think that I think I am skilled enough as a writer to be able to write around the word or the phrase so that the reader can get more or less the gist of it. And if the reader doesn't, well, then the reader can explore more, get online, get the dictionary, whatever, to find out what the exact word is. But I think it is a very good job. And I have my agent, Betsy Amster, would have told me if I didn't do a good job, because she knows no Spanish, and she read different drafts. And sometimes she would write me a frustrated email after one of my drafts and say, I was on the plane and I didn't know this word and I don't know what you meant. So that was, I sort of was held accountable to that, and it helped me to be a better writer, I think.
Yeah. Well, one of the things our book club sent in questions. So one of our book club asked to tell them more about la libreta, how the libreta worked.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was a little book that poor men were required to carry on them if they didn't have any like property, like it wasn't really acres. It's like a cuerda, which is one is like less than an acre. But if they didn't have 4 cuerdas, they had to have, and they didn't have money, like their own income. That wasn't something that they earned. Then they were required to have this little libreta, and they had to carry it with them all the time. A lot of the people who carry them couldn't read or write, so they carried this libreta that they would have to turn over to their patron, whoever they were assigned to work for, and that patron could write things in there, whatever they wanted to write. They could say, oh, this person is turned up 5 minutes late. This person, whatever. And basically the person who carried la libreta was punished. And if they had like 3 complaints, then they could be thrown in jail. I mean, it was, in a way, it was, they were indentured in a way, I would think. Good way of saying it.
That was very hard.
And it was very harsh, very harsh. So basically they had no agency. They had to go to the mayor and then they had to go to town. I remember they had to go to town to like get their libreta validated by the mayor like once a month or something like that. So it was a big hardship. And this is the Spaniards. This was during the Spanish colonial period, not the Americans.
Yes. Let's talk about machismo. You know, it seems machismo was alive and well in Puerto Rico 100 years ago. Now, we were curious.
Sort of still now, I think, in some areas. A lot of Puerto Rican women are getting murdered by their husbands or boyfriends now, so I think it's still alive. But go ahead.
But so we wanted to know why you didn't have Raul seduce Valentina. You know, they were never lovers. I mean, he was after her and everything, but why didn't you have a lover's triangle? You know, and then why did you bring it up like 10 years later when they're in Hawaii?
10 years from the time that Valentina and Raul met, you mean? Because, yes, it would be 10 years from the time they met. Because I don't think that the kind of writer I am is I don't plot. I usually start a book with a theme, something I want to say, and then I think about who best to tell the story, and I always have a woman because I feel that women are underrepresented in the arts, and I want to have a woman to be one of the main characters. And I also like to write in the man's point of view because I feel very connected to Puerto Rican men because of my father. I have so many uncles, my husband, and I feel that I know them very well. So I start with characters, and it did not seem right as the story evolved to have anything happen between Raul and Valentina. I actually did a version where an early draft where something did happen and it wasn't right. So I have to respect the characters and their journey.
No, that's very true. That's very true. Because sometimes it's the character who dictates, you know, how the story really turns out. Angelina and Inez, you know, we were very sad about their death. Now, we think they committed suicide. Is that, because it's not really clear. So, you know, did they commit suicide?
I like the reader to ponder that.
Okay. Because they weren't sad and they were not depressed, you know, or anything. It just, you know, they sort of get up and disappear. So we are pondering, just so you know.
Yes.
Okay. Another thing,
I appreciate that.
No, I'm telling you, this book, and you know, last week we had in New York City, we had our big book club discussion, and people were pondering, and people stopped reading to go on Google and search things. You know, once you mentioned them, you know, they had to search and find out more about them. So, you know, it was a little bit, we took longer to read because we kept stopping because we wanted more info. And we appreciate, you know, all the research that you've done. So one of the other things that we saw was that you have 2 gay references in the book. You know, when you talk about Angelina and Inez sleeping in the same bed, and then again when you talk about Raulito and Marcus. But you don't do anything with that. You know, it's just sort of things that you mention, you know. So why did you add those 2 references to the story? You know, because there was a debate about whether or not they added to the story.
Well, so I kind of think that I do more than mention them. To mention, and I feel like I do more than mention. I think that with Raulito, The Taste of Sugar isn't really his story. He's sort of like a very strong secondary character. But I wanted to write queer characters because I think that queer people are usually hidden in the Latino culture. And especially during this period, I don't think that anyone would have said anything outright, maybe just talk about them behind their backs. And so I thought it was very important to bring queer characters to the story, queer people to the story. And especially with Raulito. When I started with Raulito, I didn't know that he was going to be a queer person. During the time I started writing him, my son was very young. He was in college, and he was talking to me about being queer. And so I made Raulito queer intentionally in honor of my son. But with Inez and Angelina, I didn't intend them to be queer. They told me that they were queer. You know what I mean? It's kind of, I know it's kind of weird to talk like this, but really, I'm sort of an organic writer. I love to let the characters tell me their stories and where they want to go. And with Raulito, once he appeared as a queer man, it just made sense. I'm like, okay, this feels right. And so then I went with it. And I think that it would have been impossible, really, for Raulito to, at the point where he was in his life, to have a relationship. I mean, he's in prison. I hope that he has a relationship later on. You know, he's in like, he doesn't have any kind of freedom where he's at. So I hope that he can have a relationship with Marco. I really wish that for him and for Marco. I hope that they do have that.
No, we were wishing too. He was one of our favorite characters.
Oh, good.
You know?
I'm glad.
And
I love him
so
too.
Sweet. Yeah. I mean, even when he was a little boy, you know,
Yes.
because he basically, you know, grows up before our eyes. So we felt like, you know, we were like madrinas or something. And,
yes.
And he was one of our favorites, you know. And let me tell you, when he got separated in Hawaii, we all took a big breath. We were like, oh my God, where is he? Where is he? We were terrified.
And he had to be separated because I wanted to write. It's fiction, but I wanted to base it in fact and what really happened to some of our Puerto Ricans who went to Hawaii, and often they separated the families. They didn't care, and they changed the last names, so it was hard to find each other. When you got the opportunity to look for somebody because the last names were different.
Yeah. Our Denver book club would like to know, because you sort of, you know, you end with a cliffhanger, and so they were very interested to know if the Puerto Ricans and the Japanese, you know, did strike against the Hawaiian plantation owners, and did they win any sort of, you know, better working conditions.
You know,
because
I think,
read that you had said that you got all the newspapers, so they wanted to know if that's where you got this idea for the strike.
You know, I have to say that I did so much research throughout the years that if I had to go back and point out every single place where I found things, it would be hard. But there is a book called Pahana that I have in the back of my novel. I listed, written by a Japanese-American writer, and he wrote mostly about Japanese, but he also wrote about Puerto Ricans in one of the camps. What the plantation owners like to do was to separate the workers by nationality, so they couldn't get together and rise up and strike. But there were several times that there were strikes with Puerto Ricans and with Japanese. And you could probably find that information in that book, Pahana. So at one point, some Puerto Ricans went on strike in one of the plantations because the Lunas beat them with the whips. And so they went on strike, and the owners told the Lunas they had to ease up. It's better to treat them with love, that kind of thing. But I think it was just temporary. There were some plantations where they were nicer to you, but in general, I don't think it was so good. But I think that, yes, they did work together, and I thought, wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yes. We thought it was wonderful, too. We had high hopes, great expectations. Okay. So one of the other things that we noticed was that you had a couple of modern references that jarred.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Like, for me, I'm from Ponce, okay?
Yeah,
and you say a couple of times, well, not even a couple, you say a few times in the book, you say Ponce es Ponce,
Yes.
you know?
Yes.
And that's, you know, I have that T-shirt, you know, Ponce es Ponce, lo demás es parking, you know, I'm sure that you don't mean that.
Yeah.
So, and then you also have, you know, like when they're planning the strike and everything, and Vicente says pa'lante, you know, that's one of those modern phrases.
Right.
Well, we think of it as modern phrases for when we have, you know, when there are strikes nowadays, when there are, you know, revolutions nowadays, you know. So we thought that those were modern words. Are they not modern words? Were they, you know, phrases 100 years ago?
You know, I think Ponce es Ponce. I'm not 100% sure. I don't know. I couldn't take an oath, but I thought that during that period, people in Ponce were also very snooty, and that was the you know, the gem of Puerto Rico, and I thought that.
As it should be.
So I thought that was something that, and there are some things that I put in there for my own personal pleasure. And that could have been one. And I did it because my family loves Ponce. And so I just thought, you know, kind of like, I don't know, maybe a little homage to Ponce. Palante, I feel like I had to give my characters some kind of hope, you know, that things would be better, and so that's why I gave it to them. Another thing that I did for myself was the Japanese characters. I named them after one of my favorite books, a Japanese book that those two characters are in it, and so I did that for myself. There's just some things that I put in there kind of for myself.
What's your favorite book?
The Japanese book?
Yeah.
I think it's, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it's the Mioka sisters. I don't have it with me on hand. But so I just thought to honor that book and to honor the characters in the book, I named them after them.
Very good. So what is next for you? Are you working on another book? Are you working on a sequel? What's happening?
Something really interesting that happened is one of my sisters is moving, and she lived with my mother for some years, and she found a book that my father had. My father died in 1985, and she found a book called Puerto Ricans in Hawaii, and it was we couldn't believe that she had that book because I've done so much research and I never saw that book. So she's going to give it to me. So I'm interested in reading it because it talks about like the next generation, like maybe Lourdes' generation, or her grandchildren's generation. So I'm interested in reading it. But I am working on another book. I'm working on a new novel called The Girls from Humboldt Park. And they grew up in the 1970s in Chicago, and I'm very interested in writing about the social situation there, the economic situation, the police brutality against the Puerto Ricans in that period and in the 60s. And today I was just reading this book called Al Norte, and it has to do with agricultural workers in Michigan working in beet farms, and there's a chapter on Puerto Ricans. So I think I'm going to give some of those details to one of the fathers of the girls from Humboldt Park. So that's the way I work. I do a lot of research and try to have more than a few characters because I feel most people don't know Puerto Ricans. And this is my opportunity to create worlds and introduce Puerto Ricans to people who don't know them, and for us Puerto Ricans to celebrate our history and our culture and our people.
Yes, yes. Thank you. We applaud you for that. We want people to know more about Puerto Rican culture, Puerto Rican history, because it's still not something that they teach in the schools.
Mm-hmm.
It's frustrating, but as you read novels. I like to read novels about Puerto Rico, by Puerto Ricans or by anyone. But that's one of my preferences. So our last question: what are you reading now?
Well, I'm going to start Across the 100 Mountains by Reina Grande. I've never read it, and I'm very excited to read it. Have you read it?
Yes, we've read it. We read it.
Okay.
It's actually in it was published a few years ago, like the adult version, and then there was the Spanish version, and now she has the young adult version, for children, which they were all fantastic. She has Reina Grande has she's come a long way, and she's a very good writer, and it's beautiful to find, to see the culture displayed so well, just like you did. Your book was amazing. Oh, okay.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
The Taste of Sugar. Why not The Taste of Coffee?
Because that's a question that I love readers to ponder. But
we're doing a lot of pondering here.
Okay, but one of the reasons I did it, because for me, sugar it's not just about the sugar cane. It's about the sugar cane, but sugar could be so many things. But for me, sugar is, and the sugar and coffee are kind of like the frame. It's the frame of the novel, what I wanted to hang the novel on. Coffee, colonialism, sugar colonialism, and also the pleasure of coffee, the pleasure of sugar, and just life. To me, life is coffee and sugar. But I just thought it just means so much. And if I just said coffee, it wouldn't have worked, because they're going to Hawaii and they're going to work in the sugar plantation. But I felt like that was the part of the colonialism thing, the coffee and the sugar. And one day, I have a hard time with titles, and one day I thought of that title, and I just felt like it was right. And I was very glad that my publisher let me keep it, because my old publisher for my first novel did not let me keep my title. They changed it, and Live Right never, ever said anything about it, so I was thrilled.
Yes. Well, thank you again for joining us this evening. We wish you all the best, and we extend our thanks to your publisher, Live Right Publications. And please let us know, when your next book comes out and everything, because we are very interested. And if you ever write a sequel, about Lourdes' story, or maybe her grandchildren, we want to be the first to know.
Okay. Thank you so much. I really was excited to be on, and keep up the good work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Julia?
Comadres Marisel and Maria, we are so grateful for the insightful interview and for spending time with us this evening. We enjoyed the sharing of perspectives and insights from your work and your life. We treasure the opportunity to have learned about you, and we feel more connected to you. We thank Live Right Publishing for their support of this teleconference and for their generous gift of books for winners of early registration. We thank our audience for taking the time to join us for this teleconference, and thank you for those that submitted questions. We'd also like to thank Comadres Maria Ferrer for the media coordination and Comadre Dora Abreu, who handled the Twitter chat this evening, and also for the web work she does for us. Without this volunteer leadership team, this book club and all the associated work would not happen. Mil gracias. Please remember to
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Please remember to carry the books you are reading, always displaying the title and shamelessly advertise what you're reading. Buy books to support our authors, and if your library does not have a book you want to read, ask them to order it. And please, attend your local book club meetings and bring a friend or two. Remember, it's open to everyone, men and women, and not just Latinos. Our book of the month for September is Running by Natalia Sylvester, published by Clarion Books. When 15-year-old Cuban-American Mariana Ruiz's father runs for president, Mari starts to see him with new eyes, a novel about waking up and standing up and what happens when you stop seeing your dad as your hero while the whole country is watching. This certainly sounds like a timely novel for sure. Our additional conversations with book for September is Afterlife by Julia Alvarez, published by Algonquin. Afterlife is a compact, nimble, and sharp novel. Set in this political moment of tribalism and distrust, it asks, what do we owe those in crisis in our families, including, maybe especially, members of our human family? How do we live in a broken world without losing faith in one another or ourselves? And how do we stay true to those glorious souls we have lost? Our teleconference will be held on Monday, September 28th. Look for the teleconference registration announcement coming soon. Mil gracias to all. Stay safe y buenas noches.